If you're thinking about starting a low-carb diet for weight loss, type 2 diabetes, or improving your overall health, but for whatever reason you don't want to do full keto and you want to eat a little bit more carbs, you should watch this low-carb diet for beginners video. I'll explain how to get started with the low-carb diet, what foods to eat, what foods to avoid, how to calculate your macros, or how to know the approximate macros, and give you an example of 1 day of full low-carb eating, fully broken down into grams and macros. It's a complete low-carb diet for beginners guide that will help you to get started. So first, what is a low-carb diet and what are the benefits? As we see from the title, the low-carb diet aims to reduce carbs. The official dietary guidelines recommend getting at least 50% of our calories from carbohydrates, which is equivalent to around 200 to 250 grams of carbs a day. Their regular dietary advice is focused on eating more grains, fruits, legumes, and other high-carb foods. The problem with this recommendation is that most people can't handle this amount of carbs and start gaining weight, get insulin resistance, and develop all sorts of health problems, including type 2 diabetes, obesity, and PCOS. And it's getting worse. Type 2 diabetes used to be a health problem that you get in your 40s, and now we see more and more younger people, even kids, getting type 2 diabetes. Reducing carbs helps you to have more stable energy, mood, and focus, and you don't need to snack as much because you're no longer hungry and sleepy all the time. Low-carb diet helps you to prevent diseases, lose excess weight, and feel so much better. If you or your family are looking to change your eating habits, going low-carb is a natural way to transition away from junk food and start eating natural whole foods. What's the difference between the low-carb diet and the low-carb keto diet? These both diets are low-carb. However, keto is a lot lower in carbs. While following the ketogenic diet, you can consume up to 50 grams of carbs a day. You use ketones instead of glucose as your main source of fuel. Your body creates enough glucose to maintain normal blood glucose through the process called gluconeogenesis, where protein and fat is used to make glucose without eating carbs. The low-carb diet, on the other hand, could still rely primarily on glucose for energy, but could put you in ketosis occasionally. Ketosis is a totally natural and healthy state. Human babies are born in ketosis. We can get into ketosis through restricting carbs, fasting, prolonged exercise, and sleeping. The low-carb keto diet got bad reputation because of some poor quality, non-science-based media articles trying to make it look bad. However, after reading a lot of research papers and studying the whole mechanism of the low-carb keto diet, I have zero concerns about the safety of this way of eating. What we should be concerned about is the long-term safety of following our high-carb, low-fat dietary guidelines. We were never as overweight and sick as we are now, while following these healthy eating guidelines. We're told to eat more carbs and less fat, while we have a lot of evidence that this way of eating is creating type 2 diabetes and obesity epidemics. Now, what are the macros and grams of carbs for the low-carb diet? You should aim for around 70 to 100 grams of carbs a day. The approximate macros for the low-carb diet could be around 10% to 20% of your calories from carbs, 20% from protein, and 60 to 70% from fat. We don't want to get too little or too much protein because both options come with their own risks. Too little protein and your body starts breaking down your muscle tissue. You're losing hair. If a child gets too little protein, he or she might not develop properly. We're built from protein. Too much protein and you overactivate the mTOR pathway that increases your cancer risk, speeds up aging, and shortens your life. So it's important to get this right and not to follow some very high or very low protein diets. How much protein do we actually need? So if you're an average male, you weigh 75 kilograms and you're moderately active. Your daily protein intake should be 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which works out to be 60 grams of protein a day. And if you're trying to gain weight, it is recommended to consume around 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is equal to 160 grams of protein a day. However, I would not recommend eating this much protein over a prolonged period of time. And for children, it is recommended to get 1 gram of protein per 1 kilogram of body weight. So a child that weighs 30 kilograms would need around 30 grams of protein a day. Now, as you know all this, how would a full day of low-carb eating look like? I'll show you a breakdown of a full day of low-carb eating with macros and grams so that you would have a better idea. Let's say for breakfast, you would have a cup of coffee with some double cream and a piece of 85% cacao dark chocolate. This breakfast would have 4.6 grams of carbs, 27.1 grams of fat, and 3 grams of protein. Then next, for lunch, you would have 3 organic fried eggs, a rocket salad with olive oil, cherry tomatoes, and half of a red bell pepper, 2 pieces of brie cheese, which is around 60 grams or 2 ounces, and a natural Greek yogurt with berries and stevia, and an apricot. This lunch would have 19.1 grams of carbs, 71.4 grams of fat, and 38 grams of protein. And lastly, for dinner, you would have 100 grams of organic beef burger steak, 150 grams of oven-baked butternut squash with butter, and a small serving of quinoa, around half a cup of cooked quinoa, and a small apricot and a handful of pecans. This would give you around 20 grams of protein from the meat, 2 grams of protein from butternut, and 4 grams of protein from quinoa. Of course, not all protein sources are the same quality. If you compare beef protein with protein from quinoa, beef protein will have a much better amino acid profile that is closer to our amino acid requirements. But I'm not gonna get into too much detail here. This meal would have a total of 38.6 grams of carbs, 35.5 grams of fat, and 25.7 grams of protein. And you could have one snack, that is a serving of fruit, for example, a banana, or a cup of blueberries, or an apple. If you're not diabetic and you're not trying to lose weight, one higher sugar fruit a day would be fine. A banana would have 26.9 grams of carbs, 0.3 grams of fat, and 1.2 grams of protein. Or 1 cup of blueberries would have around 21 grams of carbs and 1 gram of protein. This whole day of eating is 1,824 calories, and the macros are as follows: 18% carbs, 67% fat, 15% protein. In grams, it would be 83.4 grams of carbs, 134.5 grams of fat, and 67.7 grams of protein, which is fine on a low-carb diet. And if you would remove quinoa, banana or blueberries, and butternut squash, and replace it with broccoli and other non-starchy veggies, it could be keto. So, do you need to track your calories or your macros while following a low-carb diet? You can do it for a day or two if you want to, but it is not necessary, and it would make it less sustainable. You can eat low-carb foods and just know your approximate macros. There's no need to overcomplicate it. You can follow this simple method. 1/4 of your plate is your protein. 1/4 of your plate is your healthier carb sources. For example, carrots, butternut squash, sweet potatoes, quinoa, or lentils. And the rest of the plate, around half, is your non-starchy vegetables. Some greens, peppers, and tomatoes, or steamed broccoli or cauliflower, together with some grass-fed butter or extra virgin olive oil. And for dessert, you can have either a fruit or some berries, or a sugar-free full-fat yogurt or kefir with stevia and berries, or pieces of real fruit. What are the foods to eat and foods to avoid on the low-carb diet? The foods to avoid include unhealthy high-carb foods, such as bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, cookies, sugar, ice cream, vegetable oils, crisps, sugary drinks, processed meat, and similar foods. Some foods are simply unhealthy and should be avoided altogether. Junk food tricks your brain and makes you not like natural whole foods. You should stay away from processed junk food, and after some time, you will get used to eating natural whole foods. Some foods that are not okay on keto, but are okay on a low-carb diet, include onions, butternut squash, carrots, beetroots, and a small amount of healthier high-carb foods, such as quinoa, black rice, lentils, sweet potatoes, and fruits. So let's look at some of the best low-carb vegetables and their digestible carb content per 100 grams. In the UK and other European countries, we don't have to subtract the fiber from total carbs. In the US and some other countries, fiber is added to the carb content, making it higher, and you have to remove it to get your net carbs if you're tracking your carbs. As I said, it's not necessary to track anything. The best low-carb veggies include cabbage with only 3 grams of carbs per 100 grams, broccoli 4, spinach 1, Brussels sprouts 5, eggplant or aubergine 3, celery 1, peppers 2 to 5, tomatoes 3, green beans 4, cucumber 3, butternut squash 8, carrot 9, onion 10, and beetroot 9. All of these veggies can be eaten daily in higher amounts, and they should take around 1/2 of your plate, and you can cook them or eat some of them raw. Then next, the best low-carb protein sources include wild fish such as wild salmon, sardines or anchovies. Smaller fish is always better, and larger fish is always worse. Large fish such as tuna will have a lot of heavy metal mercury, while something like anchovies or sardines are almost always wild and are very low in mercury. Other great protein sources include grass-fed organic meats such as beef, pork and lamb, organic poultry, organic organ meats, organic or wild prawns, organic eggs, organic tofu and tempeh, minimally processed cheese, organic yogurt or kefir, nuts and seeds. And most protein sources should have only protein and fat and be either 0 or close to 0 carb content. Then next, the best low-carb fat sources, other than your meat, fish, nuts, seeds, and cheese, are grass-fed butter, ghee, extra virgin coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and extra virgin avocado oil. They're also either 0 carb or very close to 0. We need healthy fat for great brain function, production of hormones. Fat is used to make walls of our cells. Definitely don't go low fat. Low fat diet is unhealthy. Then next, the best low carb fruits. Raspberry, only 5 grams of carbs per 100 grams. Blackberry, 5. Strawberry, 6. Peach, 8. Blueberry, 12. Apple, 12. Cantaloupe, 7. Lemon, 6. Rhubarb, 3. Cranberry, 8. Currants, 10. Apricot, 10. But as one apricot is only 35 grams, it would have only 3.8 grams of carbs per fruit. Then watermelon 7, orange 9, and grapefruit 8. These fruits are worth including in your diet if you're not following a strict keto diet. However, if you have type 2 diabetes or you're trying to lose weight, I would suggest sticking only with the lowest carb fruits. The best low-carb sweeteners include stevia, monk fruit, and erythritol. I use stevia everywhere, starting from smoothies to yogurts, and I use erythritol only on rare occasions if I'm baking something. Stevia and monk fruit are natural, safe, totally healthy sweeteners that don't affect blood glucose or insulin. Erythritol is the healthiest sugar alcohol. However, it can cause digestive issues if consumed in larger amounts. The worst type of sweeteners that you should avoid on a low-carb diet include all the artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame and sucralose. They have been linked with cancer, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and obesity. So these were all the foods that you should eat and foods that you should avoid on a low-carb diet. I hope you found this low-carb diet for beginners guide useful, and you will be able to implement a healthy lifestyle change. I try to make this video as informative and as helpful as possible. If you found this video useful, like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.